y'all, welcome back to my channel. My name's Kate if you're new, and I haven't recorded in a hot minute because that's what my channel is like these days. Last video I recorded in February, didn't get up till April, I think. We're recording this in August. We shall see. It's August 15th, a Monday. I go back to work on Thursday. Like, I start the school year on Thursday. I work as a speech language pathologist at an elementary school, in case you didn't know. Which means that I don't know when this video is gonna make it up, but we'll all be finding out at the same time, I guess, shall we? So, this is my mid-year check-in video. I like to do at least 3 videos a year, a yearly goals, a mid-year check-in, and a final wrap-up. If nothing else happens, that is what you should get from this channel. And so, this year, it's mid-year check-in time. Yes, it's happening in mid-August, technically past the midpoint of the year, but yeah, it's where we are. This is not quite the mid-year book freakout tag, but I did crib a bunch of the questions from that just to talk generally about how my reading has been going this year. So, the first question on here was, what is the best book that you've read this year? And honestly, I've read a lot of really good books this year. I've been having a pretty good reading year. But one of these top contenders has to go to this little series over here, which is the Graceling series. Now, I mentioned this on my goals video for the year, so probably not a huge surprise that I got to these, but these are fucking delightful. And when I say delightful, I do also mean heartbreaking and heart-wrenching and, you know, all of those emotional things, but also, they're so fucking good. This is like one of the only YA series, especially that came out of like the early 2010s, that like still deserve rights. Okay, now I hadn't read this series in a good 10 years when I picked these up this year, so I had to remember a whole lot. I remembered the basic plot arcs of each book, and that was about it. I had forgotten how fucking delightful all of the relationships in this series are. So far, all of the relationships have been like heterosexual relationships, although I feel like there was a mention in book 4, Winterkeep, that one of the main characters was bisexual, but I can't remember if that is true or not. I think I'm thinking of the new girl that's introduced in this one, not of our pre-existing characters. Anyway, the male love interests in these books drink their respect women juice daily. They do vary in terms of like tone and arc. I went into the like premise of this series in my yearly goals video, so I don't want to repeat myself too much, but I will say Winterkeep, the new one, fucking destroyed me. It's so great. Apparently, I thought that this was the end of the series. Apparently it's not. There's a new one, Sea Sparrow, coming out later this year in October. I'm gonna need to read that immediately. I will need to read however many of these books that she writes, because apparently she's not done. But I'm not complaining, because these books are great. First one came out in 2008. The third one that I thought was the last one came out in 2012. So these are like pretty old YA in terms of like the genre, and they hold up fantastically, and I'm so excited that she's continuing with the series. So that one was really great, but that might not be my favorite because I also finished the Queen's Thief series. So this year I only read 2 of them. I read The King of Atolia, which is book 3, and then I read Return of the Thief, which is book 6. So I've read all of them multiple times. That's just how I did it this time, because if I tried to reread the whole series, I would lose momentum by the time I got to Return of the Thief, and also I felt like I needed to have King of Atolia fresh in my mind, because it's the most plot relevant to Return of the Thief, has the most recurring characters from that book and everything, so yeah, I just read King of Atolia and Return of the Thief this year, and oh my god, I'm having so many feelings. I do need to now reread the entire series now that it's done. I think I can finish them all without losing momentum. It was more that the like activation energy to start Return of the Thief was really, really high because I was really nervous about how this series was gonna end, and I didn't need to be. It was amazing. I also kind of want OT4 fic of all the rulers now. Like, not all of them are sexual or romantic, but they're all partners, you know? And I want to read it. Return to the Thief, book 6, is also the first time that she's introduced a character as a POV character since The King of Atolia, I believe. Or, I mean, other than the first book, The Thief. But in a lot of the other ones, it'll be like, we've never had this person as a narrator before, but we've seen them before. Whereas this one was a brand new character. I thought that it was a minor character in King of Atolia was the main character, but this is actually someone in the same family. I had gotten the family right, but didn't realize it was a brand new person that we'd never met before. And I love him. He is like my son that I personally raised. I feel very, very protective over this poor boy. Yeah, poor little Ferris is just so sweet. He's trying so hard. He's also a disabled main character. He is not able to speak. He has something kind of like a club foot, and that's why we know the family, but not him, because he was like sent away to a villa, you know, exiled essentially, but gets called back to the palace and involved in a bunch of shenanigans. Eugenides, of course, because he is my favorite feral demon nightmare child, complimentary, sees this poor child and is like, oh, I'm adopting you. You're mine now. And yeah, I loved it. It was so good. I also, because one of my goals was to read standalones this year, read The Witch's Heart by Genevieve Gornichek, I believe is how that's pronounced. This is a retelling of Norse mythology featuring Angerboda, who is mostly known in Norse mythology as Loki's wife and the mother of monsters. She birthed Fenris and Jormund something, that snake, and Hel as well. Hel, either way. And, you know, places her at the center of these myths and also kind of weaves a few together that aren't necessarily ascribed to her, but could be, you know, so it weaves this whole arc of her life that was really, really good. I read this in a day, I think, especially with standalones. That's sometimes pretty easy for me to do if I just get totally wrapped up in it, and I did. Yeah, I really loved this. If you love myth retellings, and especially if you like kind of feminist bent myth retellings, you'll really like this. There was some sapphic stuff in here, a little bit of gay, a little soupçon of gay, not quite as much as I would have liked, but her main relationship is with Loki for most of her life, so I get it, but also I wanted a little bit more. Also, her relationship with Loki is not super fleshed out on page. It's kind of left to the margins, but this whole book is very subtly emotional sometimes in ways that I really enjoy. Kind of actually similar to Megan Whalen Turner's Queen Thief series, is that really, really deep emotions are conveyed in really, really small moments, and I really like that about both of their writing styles. I also got into Chinese Danmei this year, which I had gotten into before. I read Heavenly Official's Blessing, was one of my top 5 books last year. But now they have started being published in English with official, well-done professional translations. Well, I don't know how well done they are. I don't speak Chinese. I can't speak to the quality of the translations, but I can speak to the fact that they are readable, as opposed to many of the fan translations, which I deeply appreciate fan translators. They're doing the Lord's work, but a lot of their translations were quite rough. And so I'd have to do a lot of mental editing. Anyway, I have to do a lot of mental editing in order to read them, so having officially published, very readable translations, delightful. I love it. So I'm reading ones that I'd never gotten to before, like The Scum Villain's Self-Saving System, which was one that I only had a tiny bit of knowledge about. There was a cartoon series, but it only covers the very, very first bit of the story in the first season. And there's a fan translation, but it was unreadable. So I knew almost nothing about it. This one is a transmigration novel, which is when a person in our world gets transported into the world of a story, like a TV show, or in this case, he gets transported into a web novel. This is a whole subgenre of stories. So in this one, he gets transmigrated into the body of one of the big villains of the series, who ends up not quite dead, but in a very, very bad situation with all of his limbs cut off and stuff. So he's well, shit, I would love to not have that happen to me. Also, in the real world, he has died, so he can't go back to the real world. He's stuck in this one. He died at his computer and gets sucked into this novel. It's very comedic. It is boys love. It is Danmei, so that's the BL genre that was popular in manga back in the 2000s. or mid 2000s to like early 2010s, I think. I found it delightful. The first 3 volumes are the main plot arc. There is a 4th volume coming, but that's all like short stories and extras and stuff. So this one I can basically wholeheartedly recommend. I'll talk more about this one in a bit. So this one is delightful and also pretty much complete. The other one that I'm reading is Grandmaster of Demonic Cultivation, which was also the inspiration for the Netflix TV show The Untamed, if any of you happen to watch that. I still don't understand why they called it Grandmaster of Demonic Cultivation and not Grandmaster of Necromancy, because that's what he's doing, is necromancy, but whatever. This one is much more complicated. It's the same author, Mo Zheng Tongzhu, but it's an older novel. Scum Villain was her first novel, and it's very funny, sweet, but also a little rough, whereas this one is a lot more developed and just a lot more, like the characters are a lot more developed, the plot is a lot more complicated and heartbreaking, etc. This one is also more of a drama, whereas Scum Villain is pretty much a comedy. Like at its heart, there's dramatic moments, but at its heart, it's a comedy. This one has comedic moments, but at its heart is a drama. I love this one, but it is quite long, and we're only 2 volumes in of, I think, a planned 5? Maybe? I can't remember. So if you're cool with cliffhangers, you can check this one out now, but otherwise, maybe wait till there's a little bit more of them out. And then the last in my like books that I've been rating 4 and 5 stars, which is kind of how I'm doing this, is like at least one of the books in the series had to get 5 stars, is I read a bunch of stuff by Catherine Addison. So first off, I read her one-shot, The Angel of the Crows. I don't know how I forgot this when I was doing my goal video. This is Sherlock Holmes fanfiction. This is Sherlock wingfic. It's in her author's note. It's like, this started as Sherlock Holmes wingfic. And then she scrubbed the serial numbers off, barely. In fact, she didn't even. Like, there is a Moriarty in here. The main character, the Watson character, is Dr. Doyle after Arthur Conan Doyle. It's not subtle. She just like swapped some names around, really, if anything, and made Sherlock an angel. An angel who is also trying to catch Jack the Ripper. I will talk more about this one later. I have a whole thing about Catherine Addison, but Goblin Emperor, I reread it. It was so good and heartwarming and delightful. I love it so much. And then I read these books, which are the sequels. Again, I thought that this was a one-off, like a one-off sequel. It is not. There is another one, The Grief of Stones, and supposedly she's planning 3 total. So there's no news, like there's no title or release date or anything for book 3, but I will be reading it when it comes out. I'll talk more about these again later, but they made me feel things in my cold, dead, shriveled heart, and I loved them. So those were my best books. My worst books of the year is, I honestly really have one. I reread The Last Wish by The Witcher, of the Witcher books by Andrei Sapkowski. They're fun. I enjoy the short stories. And I was reading them because I like deeply spiraled back into The Witcher. I mentioned in my last video that I had spent basically the entire year reading nothing but Witcher fanfictions. That started in like December and continued through about like March. That was kind of all I was reading. So I decided to reread the books, but I really only got through the first one. Also, I was doing research for my gender bent Lady Witcher fanfiction that I'm maybe kind of writing. I don't love them though. They're just written by a white man in the 90s. So like, he's constantly talking about women's breasts and things like that, but it's just not my favorite. Dandelion / Jaskier is just so much more of like a playboy in the books than he is in the show. Like in the show, he's flirtatious, but oh, you little goblin. Sorry, the cat is attacking my pizza. You little monster. So anyway, I was there for like world notes and like timeline notes and like Geralt's history notes and things like that. I wasn't really there for enjoyment, and I didn't super love it. I think I gave it like 3 stars. So the next question on here is, what is the best sequel that you've read so far? This one's tough because I've been reading a lot of sequels because that was one of my like goals this year. So between like Winterkeep and the Cemeteries of Amalo series and Return of the Thief, there have been a lot of really good sequels. But also, nothing I haven't already talked about. So we're gonna move on. The next is favorite reread, which again, my whole goal this year was like reread series and then read the next one. So pretty much what I've been doing are rereads and sequels other than a few standalones. So like I would probably say the Graceling series overall was one of my favorite reread experiences because I got to reread 3 books that were just, each one was more delightful than the next and reminded me why I loved these books so much. Like I kept waiting to be kind of disappointed and I just kept being more and more impressed, which is exactly what you want in a reread experience. But also, I adored rereading The Goblin Emperor. Like I adore Maya so much, who is the kid who is like the last remaining heir to the throne after his father, the emperor, and like all of his half-brothers are killed, and he gets just like shunted away to the palace and suddenly thrust into political intrigue that he's not prepared for. He's just such a wonderful character. Like the way that the court had been run previously by his father is not how he wants to do it, and he sets out from the very beginning deliberately making sure that he is building his court for the better. And, you know, he's trying to figure out who can he trust? Not a lot of people. But there are also people that are sick of the way that the court was run and want it to change for the better. So him finding those people, finding himself, is really, really wonderful and lovely. And I love him. So that was a really fun reread experience as well. The next question is a new release that you haven't read yet, but that you want to. I have a couple ones for this. The first is Book of Night by Holly Black. I know people aren't loving this, but I really like when Holly Black does heists. I really loved her Curse Worker trilogy. It's down there, you can't really see it. But it is a YA urban fantasy modern day, but like with an alternate history. It's very like mobster-esque, it's very heisty, it's very fun. And I've heard that this one is supposed to be a heist, so I'm really hoping that there are things in this that I like, even though I know some people are saying that like it's not her best work. And then the other one is Black Sun by Rebecca Roanhorse, but more specifically Black Sun and Fevered Star, which is the new release that came out this year. Now that there's more than one out, I feel like I can read it. I just hate reading the first book in a series when it's the only one out, because then you're just kind of left hanging and I always want to get to the next one. I need to go get a copy of Fevered Star, but once I have it, then I'll be reading these. Next one, also about releases, some most anticipated releases for the second half of the year. I have a few of these. The World We Make, which is the sequel to, where is it? The City We Became by N.K. Jemisin. This one definitely is a duology, and I am definitely waiting until book 2 of the duology is out before I start book 1. So once The World We Make is out, I will get it, and then I will read this duology. I'm not sure what the series is called. It's something about like the living cities or something like that. I read the short story that was the inspiration for this in her collection, like How Long Till Black Future Month, I think. And I really liked the concept. Again, I've just been waiting for the series to be done before I actually get to it. The next is Sea Sparrow, mentioned it already, the next book in the Graceling series. Sea Sparrow is a character, or no, Sea Sparrow is about, there we go, that's not her name, but it is about a character that we have met, that we've seen in the last 2 books. She's in Bitter Blue and Winterkeep, and she is the main character's confidant, and I'm not gonna say more than that for spoilers, but we've never seen from her perspective before. So I'm really excited about that one. Note of the Ninth, obviously. I am a total Gideon the Ninth, Hera the Ninth, Lock Tomb, totally on that bandwagon train. So super excited for that one. Then Babel by R.F. Kuang, which is coming out soon at the time of filming. It will honestly probably be out by the time I post this video because it comes out like August 23rd. And again, I'm recording this like August 15th and my timeline on like record to post has been like over a month lately. I didn't love the Poppy War, to be honest. I read the first book and was like, yeah, it was okay. And it wasn't even like the violence or anything that turned me off. It was kind of that it was supposed to be a Chinese story, and I had just come off reading a Chinese novel written by a Chinese person, and this felt like American teenagers talking to each other. Like they didn't feel like Chinese people talking to each other. And Maybe that's a very specific problem to have, but that's the problem that I had with it. Honestly, that and the pacing was super weird of the first one, and like there's a kid who's like set up to be important and then he's like killed off kind of off screen, and maybe he comes back later, maybe he doesn't, but I don't care. It just felt weird in the moment. I was just like, oh, all right. Like it didn't hit the way that I think the author was trying to, of like the horror and randomality of war, that even people that seem important can just disappear. And I'm like, nah. But I don't care about him enough because you set him up as important, but we didn't have enough time with him to care yet, so I don't. Anyway, Poppy War didn't really do it for me, but this is a totally different world for her. I really want to give her another try because I know people love the Poppy War, so I'm wondering if maybe I just need to do a different series. And then the rest of my anticipated releases for the year are just all more MXTX, which is the author's handle. Like it's Mojang Tongshu, so people just call her MXTX. Just the rest of MXTX's stuff. So the last volume of Scum Villain for the side stories and extras, the rest of the Grandmaster of Demonic Cultivation. They are publishing TGCF, Heavenly Official's Blessing, which is the one I've already read, which is why I haven't purchased it yet, because the fan translation of that one was actually really good. In fact, the fan translation is now of that one was done or was edited by the same person that is editing the like official translations. Grandmaster of Demonic Cultivation, also known as MDZS, which is like the initialism of the Chinese title, which is like Moda Zushi. Volume 3 actually comes out tomorrow from day of filming, and then MDZS Volume 4 comes out in December, like December 13th. And then I think there's another volume 5, but I don't know that the publication date has been released for that one. Yeah, Scum Villain volume 4 comes out in November, and then they are also publishing another series by a different author whose name is like Meat Bun Doesn't Eat Meat. I don't fucking know. These are online handles. People do weird shit with them. But it is called Arha, is the shortened title. I cannot remember the exact English translation title, but it's something like The Husky and His White Cat Shizun. Shizun is like master. It is a master-student story, but it is... So this one, I started the audio drama for. It was, again, fan-made for free. Like, God bless these creators. Unfortunately, COVID kind of killed that production, so it doesn't get super far into the story, but it is delightful. It is so horny. It is told by the perspective of Mo Ran, who is the student. He is a nightmare demon child, a derogatory, and he basically has this whole villain arc where he takes over the world, and then realizes that that actually kind of sucked, and then dies and is reborn back at like 16, right? So when he's still at like his monastery that he started at, and he hasn't done all of the atrocities that he does later in his life, and he's like, maybe I could rethink my life path. But he still has like all of his memories of being an adult and of his other life and all of that. So it is... He's so horny, he's so feral, he's such a nightmare, he is a goblin of a main character, and I find him delightful. He's so funny. So that one is coming out, the first one in October, and then the second one not until like January, which is kind of annoying. And that one's gonna have, I think, like 5 or 6 volumes. So it's gonna take a while before I can read all of it, and before I even get past the point of the audio drama, because I think the audio drama is gonna cover like more than the first volume, but oh well, at least I'll have it eventually. Okay, so my next one is Biggest Disappointment. This is going to sound weird because it was also on my favorites, but The Cemeteries of Amalo by Catherine Addison. I will retract this if in book 3 she lets her gays be happy and kiss. Okay? That's all I want. That's literally it. As long as she makes her gays happy and they kiss, that's all I want. And I will absolutely forgive her for all of her sins. So here's the thing. Catherine Addison, also Sarah Monet, likes to make her gays very sad. That is a thing that she did in her Melusine books, which were under the Sarah Monet handle. She let them kiss, but they were very sad, and half of the gay couple always died, you know? Which made the other half even more sad. Which, like, no one is happy in the Melusine books, but, like, also the gays are extremely unhappy. And I was just like, okay, Sarah Monet, I realized that that was, like, 2007 gay. Maybe in the 2020s we can actually have them be happy. Which, like, in Goblin Emperor, we get the backstory of the main character of Cemeteries of Amalo, which he works as what is known as a witness for the dead, where he can touch the remains of a body and get enough information about them that he can use his powers for a variety of things, right? So people petition him, and we see in these two books sort of the range that these petitions can cover, because they can cover anything from murder, right, to there's literally a little like 2-page little excerpt in here where he gets petitioned by some bakers who need to find the secret scone recipe that their other baker accidentally took to the grave with him, because they've been trying to like just recreate it, but like it's different and the patrons can tell, and so he like, you know, touches the ashes or whatever it is and figures out like it's hidden in a box under a thing. Like, so that's the variety, like murder and scones. So basically, this is not really a spoiler for the plot of Goblin Emperor. This happened many, many years before. His lover was in a very unhappy marriage and he killed his wife. And so so the main character was then called in to be a witness for the wife, and he touched her and she had like seen his face as he murdered her. So he had to then tell the guards that his lover had murdered his wife and watch him be put to death. This is what I'm saying. So obviously that fucked him up for a really, really, really long time. And in Goblin Emperor, he like just barely starts to come out of that deep depression and shell that he'd fallen into. So these books are about him very, very slowly cracking that shell open just a little bit further and acknowledging the grief that he's felt, that he's kind of been telling himself that he doesn't deserve to feel because his lover was a murderer, so he shouldn't grieve him, essentially. And that's kind of a big thing in this one, which is why I'm really hoping in book 3, since he's made some like serious progress in book 2, that he can actually be happy and kiss the boy that is clearly interested in him, okay? As long as that happens, then we're good. And this is no longer a disappointment. She did also do that in Angel of the Crows, though. Like, she made both of them very queer, but she made one of them asexual and one of them unclear. Unclear how they identify in terms of gender and sexuality, honestly. So they're both very queer, but they don't kiss. And I'm kind of mad about it because I want Sherlock and John to kiss in every universe. Except BBC Sherlock, I hated them that. They were so fucking toxic for each other. But in every other universe of Sherlock Holmes and John Watson, I want them to kiss. That's who I am as a person. And they didn't in Angel of the Crows, and I get it because Sherlock's asexual, doesn't want any kind of romantic or sexual contact of any kind, but why did you have to make Sherlock asexual? Why couldn't you have made them like Grey or Demi and just want to kiss Dr. Doyle on the mouth? So like, I mean, they're happy in Angel of the Crows. They are like each other's soulmates. They love each other very much and they're very happy, but they don't kiss. And then they do kiss in Melusine, but they're sad and everything's terrible. And then in Cemeteries of Amalo, they're sad and don't kiss. So just let them be happy and kiss. That's all I want. Okay, so my next one is biggest surprise that you've read this year. I'm gonna start with Scum Villain Self-Saving System. Because I knew that this was the author's first work and that it was rougher, I wasn't expecting to like it as much as I did. It was delightful. I will give a warning, if you're looking for spice, this is not the series for you. They fuck once and it does not go well for anybody. Like, they'll get over it, and I'm guessing in like some of the extras and short stories that she is gonna, you know, that's gonna be in volume 4. I think there's some spicy scenes in that one, hopefully where they have a nice time. There's also fanfic where they fucking have a nice time. That's almost goes without saying, but if you want links, let me know. So I just wasn't expecting to like this one as much as I did. It was delightful. It was very funny. Yeah, highly recommended. But the other one is gonna be a little bit out of left field. So this is a nonfiction. My partner and I like to listen to audiobooks when we're driving together. We live about 15 minutes away from the nearest like town. Like, we live in a tiny little not actually a town, it is a census designated area, and the town is about 20 minutes away. So when we're doing our like errands and things, we will often listen to audiobooks. We also go on road trips a lot. So we like listening to audiobooks together, but we have very different book tastes. I tend to go for fantasy almost exclusively. She tends to go for nonfiction, true crime, fictional crime, so crime both true and not, nonfiction, and lesbian romance novels. That's like her genres, right? So, but we did this book that had been recommended to us multiple times, both by her therapist and by one of our friends. It was Nonviolent Communication by Dr. Marshall Rosenberg. So I'm not gonna say that this book like changed my life, but it did change the way that we disagree. And like my partner and I as a couple had never really like fought. Like we'd have disagreements, but they'd always been like very calm and measured and with respect for everyone's feelings and all of that. So like we had the basis down, but this book really honed our language in a way that made our discussions much more concise, with much less misunderstanding, and just streamlined the whole process, honestly. Also, this book, I finished it right before, the day before, I had to have an extremely difficult and important conversation with my mother. And I'm not going to go into the specifics of that, but I will just say this was extremely helpful. I pulled out all of the communication tools that I learned in this book, and I got that conversation done in a way that went better than I had expected it to. So yes, highly recommend this book. I will say we did it on audiobook. He talks very, very slow, which you can fix by speeding up the audio, but he like pauses a lot, and I don't know why they didn't edit it out, but he has a really wet mouth, and so there's a lot of like wet mouth noises of like, I don't have my microphone because I couldn't find the memory card, and if I had one more thing delay this video, it just wasn't gonna happen. So you probably can't hear that as well as we could on the audiobook, but it was rather distasteful. So I don't know that I recommend the audiobook, but we're probably gonna get the physical copy. We're probably gonna reread it. We're probably gonna like take notes on it. It was extremely helpful, and I do recommend it. Okay, so the next one was favorite new or new to you author. This does not count because I had already read books by her, but I'm just gonna go with MXTX because this is the hole that I've fallen into and I refuse to get out of it. No apologies. The next one is new favorite character, and I'm gonna go with Selahar from The Cemeteries of Amalo, The Witness for the Dead. He breaks my heart. And he's also like closer to my age, which, you know, when you're reading like young adult and everyone's like 18 and you're 33, it's a little bit like, oh, you are children. Oh, you are babies. So to have a character that's like older and has like been through some shit in his life, I just related not to his specific experience, but just to like the weight of his experience and the breadth of his experience a lot. He just breaks my heart, and I want good things for him. Like to kiss the very pretty playwright and director who is very clearly into him. Okay? I realize the playwright and director is probably a little bit like, ooh, you have some baggage. Maybe we wait for you to be more mentally stable before we try to smooch you, which, like, good call, but I need it to happen. So I'm gonna go with that. But I also did really love the main characters in Scum Villain. It's another student-teacher romance, I know, but like, Luo Binghe is the student who starts out just like so sweet. He gets shown like a scrap of affection and is instantly just like done, like he's gone. He is fully in love and gone. And meanwhile, the main character, his name acronym is SQQ. I can't remember his actual name right now. Shen Qingqu, there we go. And then Shen Qingqu, who's the actual like POV character, is just like the quintessential tired millennial who's like, I just want to sleep, I just want to eat food and sleep. why do I keep getting dragged into this plot nonsense? Like, he does not want to be here. And again, very hashtag relatable. The next one is a book that made you cry. I am dead inside, so I don't really cry at things, but Winterkeep got close. It got close. Not quite there, but we got close. There's also a scene in this one in particular, The Grief of Stones, where he is in a corn maze and having a big emotional realization about himself and like feeling it. And again, I didn't cry because dead inside, but I did feel it. Like the tears didn't show, but I felt it in me. So it was about like realizing sort of the weight of grief and how it has been sitting on him. And that is a feeling that I have also felt. So yes, we'll go, again, no actual tears because that doesn't really happen, but we got close. Next is a book that made you happy. There were a lot of books that made me happy. Scum Villain, delightful, comedic, hilarious. Angel of the Crows, they're so fucking cute. I did also just recently read Elatsaway by Darcy Little Badger. This is another standalone, and this one, it made me happy because it features a teenager who actually tells her parents about important shit. Because a lot of books, like, teens just don't tell their parents things when there's not really a reason for them not to. Like, they have a good relationship with their parents, but they just don't tell them important things. I guess because if they told their parents, the plot would be over too quickly. So the main girl of this one is, this is a world where magic is real and known about, and like ghosts are real and known about, and her family has a tradition of being able to call the ghosts of animals back. So she had a dog named Kirby who was her childhood dog, and then when Kirby passed away, she called him back, and now she has Kirby as a ghost dog. But also, she is just like very open to communications. So her cousin, Trevor, is involved in like a horrible car accident, and he's like in a coma but then dies overnight, and overnight she has a dream and he comes to her in like his last breath and tells her, I was murdered by this dude named Abe Allerton in this town over there. I need you to go avenge my death. And she wakes up and she's like, oh, okay, well shit. So she goes and tells her parents, and they're like, okay, well shit, guess we gotta look into this now, because we're all part of this. And so it's just really nice that like her parents are immediately like on board. They get it, they know about this, they know about her, you know, ability to call ghosts and everything. It's like part of her family line. And so it's just so refreshing for that to happen. So that's why one of these book that made me happy. It just made me happy that she fucking told the adults what was happening. It's so crucial and yet missed in so many books. Okay, so last question on here is, what do you need to read by the end of the year? So I still have Priory of the Orange Tree, and I still have Strange the Dreamer and Muse of Nightmares. I still have The Raven Tower by Anne Leckie, and I still have Enchantment of Ravens. So those are all like potentials, but what I'm actually reading right now is Kate Glass, An Illusion of Thieves, but this is the pen name for Carol Berg, who I guess got sick of her covers always being awful and them not selling that well because of it, because these covers so much better than anything she ever got as Carol Berg. So this is one of the worst ones that I actually physically have. I do not have the actual worst one, which is the transformation cover. Those fucking Dayglow Batwings, man. But Breath and Bone, not great. This is not a great cover. I don't know why they keep doing her dirty like that when her books are so good. They could give her fucking good covers. But anyway, she's writing as Kate Glass now, and now she gets good covers. So problem solved, question mark. This one is a return to like Renaissance Italy, which she did in her Collegia Magica books. I read those last year. I fucking love them. Those were very like, okay, this one also has political intrigue, but this one is much more heisty, whereas that one was, how do I put it? The Collegia Magica books were kind of like also about sort of the turn of the Industrial Revolution and like the Age of Enlightenment, not Industrial Revolution, Age of Enlightenment, where magic is kind of fading and science and reason are kind of taking over, and all of that. Whereas this one, magic is kind of, they don't call it Satan, but basically they think of people that are magic touched as being like Satan touched, like the serpent, you know, the imagery is pretty similar. And so anyone who is caught using magic, which is a hereditary gift, it is not something that they're in charge of, them and their entire family is murdered. Problematic. So the main girl has magic, as well as one of her brothers, and her brother is able to like walk through walls. She's able to like replace people's memories. She hates it. She never wants to use it. Whereas her brother, who's been living in the slums, uses his powers to steal and get food for people. So anyway, they end up kind of on the wrong side of the law. The rest of her family gets like exiled, and her brother are stuck in the slums, and she's trying to keep them all from getting killed. I am really liking this book so far. I'm about 2/3 of the way through. I will give a warning that there is kind of a front loading of sexual assault in the book. It's not like described in detail, but her whole backstory is that she was sold to a brothel when she was 10 years old and raised to be a courtesan. So, you know, that's kind of inherent in the territory. Like I said, it's not described in detail. It's very obliquely referenced, but it is there. So, heavy trigger warnings for that one. The rest of the book is much less about that, but it does also talk a lot about her relationship with the, don't quite know what to call him. He's not quite a king, but essentially that. He's called Il Padrone. And she was his mistress for a while, and she started that when she was like 15. And she's like, he gave me my consent back. And I'm like, did he? Because you were 15? But anyway, when this whole getting on the wrong side of the law thing happens, he kind of gets a whiff that she might have magic, and he's just like, I am the face of the law. I cannot be seen to be breaking it. You are dead to me. Go back to the slums. And she's like, fucking great. And he's like, oh yeah, and also I'm tying your brother to you, so if he steps out of line, you both die. And she's like, great, I fucking hate you now. She like believes in his vision of the city, but like also has some complicated feelings about being tossed out. Anyway, I'm really enjoying this. It's a whole trilogy, and I know that shit's gonna get wild, because that's how Carol Berg books do. Like, we start with a heist, we end with like the universe being remade, you know? So we'll see where it goes, but I'm enjoying it so far. So yeah, that is my mid-year check-in. This was not everything that I've read so far this year. Obviously, I did also read the Trickster books by Eden Robinson. They didn't quite make it into my like favorites because the ending is a little funky, but they also didn't make biggest disappointments because I still overall really enjoyed them. So I don't know, they just kind of fell a little bit into the middle category. It is just also really kind of difficult. Books 2 and 3 focus very heavily on Jared's struggles with addiction and like his attempts to beat his alcohol and drug addictions, and sometimes the complete lack of support from some of his family members because they take him getting sober as like an attack on their lifestyle. So there's just some really difficult themes in this book as well. And then the magic gets just kind of weird. Jared also spends a lot of time, even once he knows that magic is real, like seeing things and being like, nope, I didn't see that. I don't know what it was. Nope, we're pretending that that didn't exist. Magic's not here. Nope. And I'm like, buddy, come on, I know you don't want to deal with this, but like sticking your head in the sand isn't gonna fix anything. So that was just sometimes kind of frustrating. So anyway, did I overall really enjoy the series? Yeah, I just don't quite know where to fit it. So that is going to be it for my mid-year check-in. Now, please let me know how your year of reading has been going. Have you been totally slumpy? Have you been crushing it? What's your favorite book you've read this year? Have they all been trash? Let me know. All right, and hopefully we will see you very soon. This is a joke by this point, with another video. Thanks for watching, y'all. Bye.